Is it pretty good at translating from your
This is so weird.
It stays my handwriting.
Oh, okay. Can it convert to text also?
Not that can I really? Oh, okay, well, I haven't found that feature yet,
Okay.
but
Okay.
I just mark opposite. And then it erases.
Nice.
I would like to see eraser.
Okay. Of course you don't make mistakes.
Are those expensive?
Maybe with the cover and everything.
Yeah.
Like I always used to journal when I was younger and it helped me digest. The things going on in my mind. It's like something that would be good. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, 100%, I'm just
They-
talking to the
They say
TV or
that,
whatever.
you know, through COVID and everything, like electronics and everything, that there is still actual proof.
Katie, is it showing? Because it says
When you
stop,
write
so.
something, you will remember.
I'm on the
Versus-
site right, oh, here we go, it
and
does
being
say live,
distracted by-
It does?
yes, but it does, it just has a, oh, here we go. Yes, I see
I'm a
one.
big.
You do?
My desk is full of sticky
Peekaboo.
notes.
That's
us.
so
If I
weird.
write it on a sticky note,
Okay,
then I'm done.
well,
Yeah.
I guess we'll go with that
I put a
then.
note in front of me.
I use
Um,
sticky notes and I use colored pens and I love
Which
black
one was-
Sharpie. too.
okay, I guess we're okay.
Okay, let's call the
Done.
meeting in IDA to order. Need a motion to approve the August 27th meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Yeah, thanks, Ron. All in favor? Opposed? Resolution authorizing new assistant secretary and records management officer. Who to change the name? Approved.
Pretty straightforward, this is onboarding our new secretary and appointing her.
Second.
Favor?
Aye.
Okay, you're good to go.
You're hired.
Government updates.
Well, earlier this month, we had a governance committee meeting to go over a few agenda items. And from that meeting, the committee wanted to present some next steps for their governance. The first one was the board member confidential survey. We do that on an annual basis. We opened it up mid-February and closed it mid-March. Unfortunately, we only had 3 people respond to that survey, which is relatively low in other circumstances and experiences. We usually get, if not the whole board, a majority of the board, maybe 1 or 2 not answering some of the questions. So the governance committee decided to open it up again. And so there are a few ways you can go to it. We have the QR code here, we have the website, and then if you want to fill it out via paper copy, we also have a copy of the survey following that, and then you can just give it to me. It's confidential, and then it goes into the bigger system to be computed with everything. And the governance committee identified just keep it open for a short time so people can have an opportunity to fill it out, and then we can come back and bring it back to the whole board at the next meeting. Now, Tony, because you were not here during 2023, you do not have to fill out the survey. I did reach out to our former vice chair in February. I can do that again just to see if they would be participate in the survey. I'll give it them that option as well. Any questions, comments?
If we did it in March, we don't have to do it again.
Correct, yes.
I don't know. Did you do
It's
it?
confidential.
I don't know who did it, I don't know who didn't do it, so,
Well, it looked very familiar to me, and I'm like, I swear I just took
I know,
this.
I
Now
just-
that makes sense.
yes.
I don't remember if I did it or not.
For me.
We took, so this
happened?
is, this survey is an annual survey, it comes from the ABO, just a requirement we have to fulfill. And these are the questions they have us, they're a little, I would ask things in a different manner, but this is the survey that they have provided, public authorities. Any questions?
Okay,
The next topic of agenda that we had at the governance committee meeting was the fee schedule. We discussed, the current fee schedule for the IDA, EDC, and CFDC. And in this meeting, we'll focus on the IDA fee schedule. The document you see here is what is in our application. And then they also sign at the end of the pilot application agreeing that they will pay according to the fee schedule. So this is what we currently have. After discussion with the governance committee meeting, we did look at other examples, other IDAs and how they do the fee schedule. A majority of them just say at cost for the legal fees, but we providing the intention of saying up to 1% of principal amount of project costs is mainly because we want to allow them to budget something, but it's still always at cost. So the governance committees, and this was both Ken and Amanda, mentioned that they would prefer to have an added language saying at cost, and then saying up to 1% of the principal amount of the project cost, meaning it would not go over that 1%. So this is what they proposed for the fee schedule. And in looking at other fee schedules, this seems to be the best sort of next step with us to, one, allow for the developers or the owners to provide a budget when they provide a pilot application, but also make them realize that it's not gonna always be up to 1%. It could, but a majority of the time it's not.
So move.
No,
I assume we need a motion, right? Oh, go ahead.
okay. The first thing on the application fee where there's the $5,000 legal deposit, I think that a requirement should be, not necessarily has to be written here, but it needs to be written in your policy, that there is a reconciliation of that deposit to the customer. Because that hasn't taken place up until now. You know what I'm talking about?
We
In other
credit
words-
them the legal deposit against the fees.
But they don't even know what their rates are, which brings me to my next point. Under legal fees, these are the county's legal fees, these are the agency legal fees, and I think that word agency legal fee should be added, so that somebody doesn't get confused, because they gotta pay the agency's legal fees and their own legal fees, if any. And then I think that the, whatever the rates are in the retainer agreements should be shared with the customer. So in other words, John's rates, they were $2.50 an hour, and whatever Justin Miller's rates are, or John's rates at Harris Beach, I think that there should be some, I think that there needs to be some transparency as to what the legal rates are. I don't know if they're not.
People wanna know what they're paying.
People should know what they're paying, because we found from the looking into it that I've done, and it's would coming on, I think, a year next month, that, you know, customers have been charged up to $600 an hour for legal fees from Harris Beach. So I think that definitely needs some transparency. And that's all.
Yeah, and how do you think that should be done, Julie, on the app itself? Or
You could do an addendum to each application.
like a confirmation once the application is received, like here's what to expect?
Right, and then, you know, in the course of the procedural manual, there was something about whomever in the agency is in charge of the hiring of the professional. Whoever's in charge of the hiring of the professional will be in charge of, you know, reconciling the fees and sharing the fees with customers. Maybe in an addendum, you know, because I don't know, you don't necessarily want to make it part of our manual, because fees can change.
Yeah.
But it has to be a transparent.
I mean, I know when you
feature to
apply
this.
for a mortgage, there's a required disclosure within X number of hours that goes out saying, this is what we can expect of this transaction.
Yeah,
It's not
it's like-
called that in English, but that's what it means.
As far as the total.
Yeah,
but
everything.
not the rate at which they are charged, hourly rate at which you're being charged for that. Which the disclosure is the 1% or the up to, at cost up to 1%. There is a disclosure here, they're acknowledging and signing it as part of the application, but I understand where you're going. Think about it a little more, I don't know. But we did vet our legal fee structure, past projects, how we compare to other IDAs in our committee meeting. And both Ken and Amanda seem quite satisfied that what we're doing is appropriate.
I couldn't go that. But like, just with the $5,000 legal deposit, that buys 20 hours of legal time with John. That's significant amount of time. And I guess we could go through and see, on average, how it's depending on the complexity of what you're doing, how many hours it's gonna be. But I don't know, I just feel that some transparency there is definitely needed.
I hear what you're saying. I need to give some thought to how we provide the transparency on the rates, whether it's, I don't know, I'll say it's, to my experience, not typical of IDAs to provide that level of detail, but I understand your point about transparency and I'll have to give some thought to the appropriateness of the approach to
I'm not sure if it would be appropriate for me to bring this up in audit and finance to go back through some of our stuff and audit the hours. And maybe have them go at it on that level. And Julie, are you,
Do you want the hourly rate on there or just the disclaimer that there is also legal fees that are your responsibility?
I think sharing the rates is a good idea.
Transparency.
I mean,
People know.
eyes
transparency.
wide open.
I gotta give some thought to that.
Because, I think a really big thing that we need to consider is a lot of the people that, we've been doing this for almost 7 years now. A lot of the people that are coming in for this aren't the most sophisticated business people. Some are very sophisticated and some aren't, So the
Well, they
ones
should
that,
have counsel of their own.
so, we could do a little score mentoring just in the way we present to them, letting them know these are the rates, this is how this works, And I think that would really be an educational experience too for people.
I appreciate your comments, and
Yes.
I'm not, I'll give it all some thought, we'll talk about these things. It is incumbent upon applicants to have their own counsel, right? We have our counsel data, there's two sides of the table.
Right.
I appreciate your comments about transparency and I will give it some thought, we'll have some discussions on that.
Okay,
And it doesn't change this schedule, right? That changes the track. We do something more, it changes procedure for the app process. Or do you want it spelled out in the schedule?
well, how hard is it to change the schedule? Not hard.
No, but to your point, advertising fees on a schedule, I don't know. Again, here at the table, I would have to give this a little more thought before committing. But I understand what the point you're making on.
All right, so just add agency in front of the word legal. So that it's very clear to them that they're paying the agency's legal fees.
That's fair. That's an easy one.
Yeah.
The rate
And then
question, the engagement with the project.
legal deposit. And then just say any unused funds will be refunded to the applicant. Or not. That was another thing that came up, I remember now, that was a non-refundable. It's a non-refundable application fee, but what about that legal deposit? Is that non-refundable as well?
Way to read the letter, yes.
Well, first of all, adding Paris Beach is new, about a year ago. Originally, we only had the legal deposit for John. And he's not here right now, but from my understanding, he puts it in an escrow
Yes.
until it is used.
So in other words,
But I would rather have you hear that from him than for me, but that's what he's informed me in the past. In fact, he just asked me about it.
Yeah, he takes deposit.
But
But if it's not
in all,
used,
in all my time here, I've never seen a reconciliation in his invoices, all those ones I went through, to say I received a $2,500 legal deposit from K2 Brewing. These are the number of hours I applied toward that 2,500, and now I am due this money more. Like the $103,000.
It is there.
Did he have, what about 10 hours? You know what I mean? I don't know, I never saw that
They're there.
entry in his invoice,
It's there.
and I think it's important to do that.
Well, the invoices clearly credit the customer for their deposit. John was taking the full deposit when I got here, and since then,
Have you ever seen any legal
Just-
deposit come back to the customer?
no, I mean, effectively every application that we've received and have accepted a legal deposit has gone to close or has closed, so the fees have exceeded the deposit in every instance.
Okay,
So there wouldn't be a need to credit anyone back any legal deposit. In fact, council's sitting on deposits for a project that's been approved by this board about 2 years ago that has not yet closed. So that's an example of, frankly, why they take legal deposits, because they are investing time in processing applications, to put it that way. And then not moving to close, holding that deposit, and in fact, they're likely to an hourly rate, and there's a condition within our application that attorneys start working on these things in your current cost when you submit an application. If it doesn't close, that attorney is still due to be paid for their time. I'll give some thought to the disclosure on the rates. Come back to this. If there's a need for a detailed discussion and you'd like another committee meeting,
okay,
let us know and we'll schedule it.
well, once we, after you think about this and what you can,
But to the point of the business today, so adding the at cost language and then add, I think an amendment here, adding the agency legal fee instead of just legal fee, say agency legal fee. It's an easy fix, we can get that done.
so, by adding the at cost language, that means that we're not gonna come up with a situation like, Timothy Capstone had, where he was getting, $40,000 demand for a lawyer for legal fees. He's gonna actually get an invoice ahead of time, where he's gonna see what that cost is, right? Just procedurally, the at cost is gonna be shared with the customer prior to close.
That's really your question.
That's what that language is all about, right? The
That's
customer's
not what
going to
that
get an
language
invoice
is.
prior to closing.
That's not what that language is. The language is about being explicit about the potential or total cost and what they can expect as far as the sum of the bill goes. Right? So it's at cost up to, it's not 1%, it's at cost up to that. That's the intent of adding that language, just to be explicit. Costs associated with.
Because it could be less than 1%, but not more than 1%.
Correct. In almost every instance, it has been less than 1%, based on our review of previous projects and the cost benefit analysis that we do.
So there is that little language down below talking about modifications and amendments. That was put in place because, well, in most cases, it's typically solar projects, they change names. So, but that is, we have to go through a process through the pilot in order to make changes. So we do have some language here in accordance to the modifications. I believe that project was more about the modification of that.
What happened, typically, and what happens sometimes leading up to closing, sometimes day before, which makes it difficult to provide an invoice, if you will, ahead of time or substantially ahead of time for review, given that some changes are happening, in some cases, right up until closing. So as best as they can, we can ask our attorneys to provide a estimated closing invoice, detailed closing invoice, and I appreciate that. But there is a little wiggle room within projects, in particular for that project. In Ontario, where there were some very last minute changes that required additional legal time, given the structure of the transaction.
Good.
Yeah.
Reschedule.
Not from us unless you guys have anything.
Okay. Resolution to approve updating internal control finance policy and the finance procedure manual.
So we currently do have the internal control policy. That's a policy you guys see every January that we review. We did a little updating to it. So the current one you guys have has a lot of procedures written into it. So when staff changes or duties change, then the whole policy has to change. So this, these two documents that we have in front of you were reviewed by a governance committee. So the policy is more broad aspect. And the procedure manual is your SOPs, your more procedures. So we're just kind of splitting them out. That's what this is.
Work instructions, you know, as far as the how-to versus the overall structure of the, so we spoke about this during governance to the point where it's just, if anything, this makes it more clear going forward. And it's a good job with that.
Clear is good.
I had one question on page 6. I don't know, if you give the second. About the wire transfer. It speaks to you. Who's you? And who is the audience in that?
Six.
Right, it's
Oh,
the
this
very
is
last
to-
paragraph.
Yep, this goes on an invoice to a customer, so with this being the IPA, it'd be a pilot customer.
Okay, so that the you is not us, not the one here that's wiring money, it's to the person who's correct.
If you could scroll up, that'd be helpful on this
So
page.
say we close with Capstone tonight, we put that on their invoice, the second telling them, you would have to call us to verify this information.
Okay. Okay,
I can change.
no, I just wasn't, I was reading, the context was just a little bit different than the other paragraphs. So that makes sense. Thank you. I make a motion, we approve.
And second. And favor. Okay.
Next one, we have, so this isn't in the packet because as you're all aware that, terms have been, rates have been changing so drastically, especially in the past like 2 weeks or so, that we did kind of draft, resolutions. In your paper packets, I included kind of a rundown of what we currently have now. So these are our recommendations of, all right, let me back up. You have 2 CDs that are maturing on September 30th. One that was from March and then one that was from last September. Both are maturing on the same day. So I guess the question is, what are we going to do with the funds? The first one will be about $105,000. The second one will be about $214,000. So we went and analyzed all the different rates at the current moment. That's what the sheet is here. So we made a little recommendation for the 105,000, the highest rates for 6 months. And then for the 214,000, the highest rates for a year, 12 months.
So what are those terms?
Yep.
So what banks and.
Yep. So they are both L&B.
Well, what the, so 105,344 is L&B. Do you have that on?
I don't because I just finalized it this morning.
And then the percentage rate for
Yeah, I'm
105.
sorry, it's in the packet, the very last sheet.
Separate sheet.
Yeah, it's separate. So 6 months, the highest one is L&B at 4.8. For the 105. For 6 months, yep, approximately 6 months.
I think take it now.
Yeah.
So that'll give you about $2,500 of interest. Second highest for 6 months was community, and then we go back down to C&B, which they're currently at.
So do we wanna approve this one first and then go to the next one?
6 months is long, we wanna tie it up.
So that's why we kind of separated to keep some funds liquid. So 6 months for about the 100,000 and then a year for the 200,000 is what staff kind of felt confident with.
Gotcha.
And this will, so for 6 months from now, will bring us to March, and there is another Fed meeting along with an audit and finance meeting as well, so that'll be right around the perfect timing for your 6 months.
Yeah, in 6 months.
Especially
the next 6 months.
So this one would be reinvested at C&B.
No, they're
They
both
would
out.
both be L&D. That would be a
I
change.
see that. And is that written in gold?
Sorry.
Yeah,
Reinvest all
The
funds from
240.
9/30 maturing CNB jumbo mutual on 10/1 for a
sorry.
12-month term at approximately 4/7 to mature on 9/30.
Yep.
So that's with Lions.
Yep, they're both at Lions. And Lions did agree to lock the rates that they gave us.
thank you.
Second.
In favor?
And then the second one is for the 214,000, and we're recommending to lock it in for a year CD, again, at L&B with the highest rates, and that's at 4.7, so that will probably give you about $10,000 interest.
Thanks, Lauren.
Second.
Oh, Victor.
No,
We'll keep going.
Please do.
Up top are our account balances. As you'll notice, the main checking is a little higher than normal. The reason why is the pilot bills went out on September 1st. We've had a bunch of pilot customers already pay. So we are in the process of sending those funds out to the taxing jurisdiction, so that balance will go back down to about your average. But all in all, everything is looking pretty similar. Noted in red, but the bottom two lines there are your 2 CDs. Those are maturing. So we would expect to be about $12,000 of interest income coming in at the end of the month. Money to work.
Good.
Next page are your budget versus actuals. We're at about 80% of our budgeted net income for the year, so we're doing very well. We've got a couple of increased expenses over the past month, which Butler Prison RFP expenses have come in. Pitch competition sponsorship, the pitch competition is up and rolling, so a bunch of expenses have come in for that. Ariel will touch on that. And like I said, you have about 13,500 of interest income coming up, along with a potential agency fee when we close on a couple of pilots. That'll be about another 15,000 or so. At the end of the year, so we're looking really good at the end of the year.
My only question was the expenses, and you answered it.
Good. We done?
General update on pilot. We went over it this morning.
Yep.
We've had, not all, but a substantial number of pilot customers have paid us, and we're already starting to disperse checks. There are a handful that are outstanding. We're monitoring them, reaching out, notifying them that they got yesterday a week. Paid that bill without incurring any big costs. And we'll follow up again a little later in the week to make sure explicit about hey, clock's ticking, but like ACH options for customers have already proven to be beneficial, not only to us, but to them. catching up.
And that's that little disclaimer too. And it also helps as they call to verify our bank information. One, keep it all secure, and two, that way it gives me a heads up that there's gonna be money coming in.
Right.
But no, I think it's going really smooth this year. A lot of customers are paying early, which is great. That means we can pay the taxing jurisdictions early. So we have Williamson and Soda Street in check room. So it's going really, really good.
Nice.
Yes.
I'll provide you the update I'll provide today on the Butler Correction Facility process and transaction. We're working through finalizing the scope of our seeker review with the state. We did make a proposal to them. They pushed back a little bit on the scope and scale. We have a couple of meetings today, in fact, to kind of work through this and hoping to keep transaction costs as low as possible for our pending would-be buyer. So the scope and scale of seekers directly relative to the expenses associated with working through that process. There will be some local actions necessary to get final approval locally, and then bringing that package to ESD's board Q4 this year, Q1 next year. Q4 is hopeful, Q1 is potentially likely. Just a matter of timing on our end, but we're being very particular to make sure that we're not the ones holding up this process, and took about a week for them to reply to our suggested seeker path. So there's a little bit of delay in responses with them, but I think we're still very actively working towards a close. Lots of other stuff going on, by the way. We could take a deep dive in a lot of different directions. Solar is another part of our business at the IDA. We've seen I'll say an uptick in the conversation relative to applications and projects moving forward. We did discuss at the last meeting, I'll mention this as well, potential changes to the fee structure associated with our solar project. So if you recall, we have been at $5,500 per megawatt as far as the annual structure, the 2% escalator every year for 15 years. And given changes in the market, things are more expensive in general. I'm recommending that we move to a $6,000 per megawatt fee structure for solar projects. Okay with that, there's no resolutions or anything necessary, but we don't have a fee structure within, or the actual dollar amount within our UTEP to provide for this flexibility and changes in the market. Side note, also had some discussion in particular with the solar project developer yesterday.
Yes.
Yesterday, thank you. Relative to the use of farmland and our use of additional fees to accommodate for either the loss of or the protection of mineral soil groups 1 through 4. There are reporting mechanisms associated with New York State Ag and Markets that can are providing significant detail on those projects' impact on those mineral soil groups. Our approach to charging fees. As a reminder, those fees will be associated with our opportunity to purchase development rights on public farmland to accommodate for the balance between the loss on one hand and our ability to protect farmland.
For your update,
Yes.
any more thought about giving us a little heads up on these updates?
I have, and I saw your email, I apologize. I'm getting staffed up here, and I'm onboarding a planner as we speak, or attempting to, and I will get that. If you would like to make a motion now.
Or I'm gonna do it at the end.
Okay,
The other one.
okay.
So that's the end, no other business, motion, next meeting is October 22nd, motion is during the IDA. Thank Ben, second, Ben, all in favor?
Right.
Opposed?
Yeah.